Sure. Right, I got him. Close follow ratio on me, right? I'm being out right over the target right now. I've got a 17 right in front of me. I'm going after him.
Welcome to the Lead Pursuit Podcast, a podcast covering Blood Red Skies, a game of World War II aerial combat. Welcome to episode 38 of the Lead Pursuit Podcast. Tonight we've got another interview with some other members of the team over at Dan Verssen Games. But first, we're going to talk Blood Red Skies before we leave it behind to talk about other people's game systems. A couple things I wanted to talk about were the virtual gathering of eagles that we had a couple weeks ago. I thought it was awesome. Brett, you're on tonight. What'd you think of the virtual GOE?
Oh, man, I had a blast.
Of course you had a blast. You took up the whole time talking and being the guy giving the painting class for all day.
I worked right through lunch and didn't realize it, and just kind of rambled on about campaign stuff. But hey, I guess we'd have worse problems.
Yeah, that's true. It was fun. So we didn't play a tournament, and that's okay by me because you know what I think of competitive players. But we did play a little bit of the Malta scenarios and some of the Malta aircraft, and that was fun. And we had a variety of skill levels out there. And the RAF side with Roz and I still got schooled and shot down, but it was a lot of fun. And then obviously we had happy hour, hung out, drank beer, stared at each other on TV screens or on computer screens. But I thought it was a good time. Was there anything that you thought you wanted to see different next time, Brett?
I hope to be able to resolve the sort of focus issue for a painting tutorial next time, because that was kind of frustrating. Get
your own damn camera. That's the answer.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take you. You have to tutor me on exactly what I need.
Yeah, I think Chris had the good setup with his digital SLR, so I think we may do the same thing for our next one. Speaking of next one, we have no idea when the next virtual gathering of eagles will be. Probably sometime this summer, because everybody kind of had a good time. Personally, I'd like to play a little bit more tabletop sim and have less people talking about painting. Who cares about painting? Have virtual models. But, it's whatever anybody wants. So if you enjoyed the virtual gathering of eagles, first of all, please give us some feedback. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. Also, kind of importantly, email Warlord Games. Say, hey, we really enjoyed these virtual events, because the more they get used to that, the less they think like 20th century miniature companies, and they start thinking kind of like the future and realizing that a big part of their online following wants to do things online. So help us out.
I would guess, do they have it might be a naive in thinking that they have the capacity to produce something that's pretty high speed on that end?
For what part exactly?
For a some kind of virtual, like they could host something. Is that unreasonable?
Yeah. So I will throw my spirit Warlord here, and I'll probably be de-invited from anything Warlord ever again. But the thing is, Warlord just doesn't have much more than a very small social media footprint, which is fine. I mean, it makes it really easy to interact with their social media guy, all one of them. But I think what we've seen is they've done some stuff on Twitch with some live streams, but as to actually putting a whole event together, that might be a stretch, but it's always something we can throw at them. Because personally, I'd love to see them step up and do it. I think it would be awesome.
I mean, I thought what we did was super fun, and I was happy to do it. I would think that their presence would maybe attract more attendees. I don't know, just spitballing.
Yeah. And it was great to have Andy there to be basically our victim there in Discord. So if you thought you were going to get a canned setup like I had kind of planned, oh no, Andy jumped into Discord with the rest of us, and we all chatted and told jokes and watched my internet connection crash.
John was there the whole time, and I don't mean to disparage Warlord Games. They were certainly gracious for the whole thing. I mean, everything they, participated and congratulated us on, it was all very nice.
Yeah. I think the takeaway is, like a lot of smaller events, it may or may not be worth the while of big companies to get involved, other than sending a representative to smile and say hi, and to answer some questions. But Warlord, if you're listening and you'd like to run one of these, we'd love to help you out with it. And we'll give you all our lessons learned and things not to do, like don't sit in South Carolina and depend upon your string and tin can internet connection.
I'm just thinking about it because of the whole work situation now, we're so accustomed already in just these past several weeks of doing all these virtual things for work that I don't know if we're entering a new era. That's maybe too strong to say, but I think folks are just a lot more comfortable and are ready, maybe more ready than they ever were to receive content in that kind of format. So, hey, maybe we kind of start a thing.
I think they are, and this is my continual pitch to Warlord, and I know you're all tired of hearing it there at Warlord headquarters. Get on board for the big win with virtual stuff. It's only going to sell more miniatures because the problem is humans are still tactile, feeling kind of creatures, and so we'll play a lot of online games, but then when we go and take a look at your website and go, ooh, I can buy that in resin. Ooh, I can actually buy little airplanes that I can paint up. Most of us are suckers, and we're going to fall for that too. So join us, do something virtual, and Warlord, have a little bit of fun while you're at it. Anyway, enough about the virtual stuff. We'll figure out a date later in the summer for another one, hopefully, assuming my schedule doesn't go to the dogs. But anyway, the real Gathering of Eagles, or I should say the in-person Gathering of Eagles, Labor Day weekend, Indianapolis, 4, 5, and 6 September. Contracts have been signed, yes, with COVID clauses to get out of them. But we're tentatively thinking that we might be able to do an in-person event if it's small. We know that a huge convention won't be allowed to go, but if it's something less than 100 people, we might be able to do it. So, soon the registration information will appear on the website. Soon the hotel information will appear there as well. Please sign up. It is, once again, fully refundable when you pre-order or do your pre-registration. So if things get canceled, we'll refund that. It's not a big deal. We just want to see who all would be interested, who wants to show up in person, drink beer, push a little plastic and resin and occasionally metal airplanes around the board, and have a good time. So more will be forthcoming on the website. Expect to see some information pushes here soon. Well, along with the lead pursuit kind of events, John Russell, as usual, suckered me into something. I don't know what it is with the pusher, but I'm going out to Twisted Lords. So 24 through 26 July, Oklahoma City, right near Tinker Air Force Base. So if you ever stopped in and got a Tinker Burger, you'd know what I'm talking about. But we'll be there, and we'll be playing some Midway scenarios. We'll play some MiG Alley. We may do some other stuff time dependent because we know there's always a limit on tables at events like that. But if you want to come see kind of what the new Midway scenarios may play like, let's come play some Midway. You want to see some cool miniatures and push those around and shoot down some Japanese or shoot down some Americans if you play the Japanese. Come out and do that. And we'll play at least one big game per day and then probably have a lot of pickup games for Blood Red Skies that'll go on. So 24 through 26 July, go out to search for Twisted Lords. You can sign up. There's different tickets for different days. I believe there's a $30 all access or $35 at the door. So go sign up and figure it out. So after that, let's see what's next. Well, I'm not going to Slaughterfest in August because fuck the veteran gamer re-enlisted guys, and I don't want to go to their event because it's $40K. Oh, wait, no. I didn't mean to say that. I love you guys. You're great. Hope the best that Slaughterfest goes out in August out in California. We'll see. And that'll be the first 40K tournament out there for the year, so that'll be kind of interesting to see how it all shakes out. But there should be a lot of events, hopefully, coming up after that. I know a number of them have canceled, but in the August, September time frame, when we're trying to do our Gathering of Eagles, hopefully things will have relaxed a little bit. Or we'll be in the middle of a second lockdown, and we'll all just be playing Tabletop Sim again. How about that, Brett?
Let's do it.
Want to play some more Tabletop Sim? Yeah, that may be our fall. We'll see. Get your gaming in while you can. So a couple other things that have come out. We released... in concert with Litco, the new Airstrike flak markers, the little 5-pack of those. Brett, did you see those on the website?
Man, those are sweet. I really like them. I'm getting some. I'm getting 2 packs.
Well, I'll bring them down for you. Yeah, they're cool. I like them. I'm really happy because the team at Litco worked with us when we said, hey, we just need some minor tweaks. We want to make sure they're exactly the right scale so that nobody says, hey, your flak marker's too big, can't be used competitively, whatever. Don't care. They're exactly 20 millimeters, just like your little boom chip that the rule calls for. And I think they're pretty cool because they've got 3 different elevations and a bunch of little sparkly explosions on there. So I know I've got a couple sets that I glued together and I plan on using when we beat up on Chris here at the end of the month down at Brett's house.
How do I order those? Tell me again how I grab those.
How do you order those? Well, it's so funny. You should ask. You go over to the Lead Pursuit podcast website, which is leadpursuit.net/store. And you go out there. I guess it's really a backslash, not a slash. Either way, whatever. And you go out there and you go to the store, and there's all kinds of stuff there. There's airstrike flak markers for about $9. You got airstrike tokens for about $23. The Multimap. Hey, do you want a Multimap? You can buy a Multimap. We'll have it shipped to you for $150. Even airstrike dials. So you get tired of putting little chits down and dice, trying to keep track of your hull points and your area hits. A couple little sets of dials down there that you can dial in exactly how many hits you have left and keep track of it. And then, of course, as always, in the era of social distancing, we've even got masks. A10 Warthog masks on there. And I think the P40 mask art I have to put up there for pre-order. So pre-order yourself a cool aviation mask while you're at it if you want one.
That's awesome. I saw those on Facebook. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was laughing. A good friend of mine, Rich Cooper, who runs the Center of Aviation Photography, did the A10 masks. They are cool, but my problem was I'm like, man, I play a historical war game. I'm doing stuff, with P40s and all kinds of other things. So he and I and his artist collaborated, came up with the art for the P40 Warhawk shark mouth mask, and it looks pretty cool, I think. So I'm definitely going to be wearing those probably while we're, at least while traveling to and from the conventions this year.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I need to grab up one of those P40s for the trip to Indianapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're flying, you're wearing one. So go ahead and pick them up now. Pick up that and your extra hand sanitizer. All right, let's roll over to the hangar and talk about new stuff that we picked up. So for me, I'm really fortunate to have a great team on the Lead Pursuit podcast because they open my eyes to stuff I might not normally have. And having Chris on the Lead Pursuit podcast, he's not here tonight to discuss these things, because otherwise he'd tell us how great they are. But because he plays so many collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, he really turned me on to a lot of these card protectors and card holders. And so I went out, picked up a couple of them off Amazon for holding my Blood Red Skies cards, holding the Phantom Leader cards, because if you haven't looked at Phantom Leader or any of those games, oh my God, do they have a lot of cards. But there's a couple things that I picked up. I picked up some from Ultra Pro, which you can find on Amazon. And they've got like a 25-card plastic pack that is great for Blood Red Skies because you don't have a ton of cards. But it's hard plastic, so you can throw them in there, throw it in with your miniatures, and your cards won't get too beat up. And that's, an 8-pack of those is like about $11. And then they have the regular Ultra Pro deck boxes. I picked up a couple of those because you can put a bunch of cards in them, so you can throw all of your Theater, Doctrine, Ace cards kind of all in those, even though it's a different size. And you get like a 5-pack of those for $10, and they're kind of a thin plastic. But they work pretty well. But for serious Magic the Gathering players like Chris, they had the guys over at Monster Protectors put out some big card deck holders that'll hold either 2 or 3 full-size decks. So you could buy one of those in one of their 2-packs and probably throw all your Blood Red Skies cards in it. And it makes a nice compact little kind of thin plastic case that you can carry around. And they run somewhere around $10-$12.
Are those cases the right size for the smaller cards, like the trait cards?
So those cards fit sideways. It's kind of funny. Now, the only thing I found the hard way is not every sleeve fits in there. So a lot of the cheaper, thin, very thin, low, very few mil plastic sleeves fit great. Some of the kind of premium ones I had that have matte backing and all that were just a little bit too large don't necessarily fit well in all of them. So what I recommend is have your card sleeves on hand, go order them, and if they don't fit right, send them back to Amazon. But generally the boxes will fit any card, any sleeved card, or will fit the smaller cards, the mini cards sideways. So you can stack a bunch of stuff in there.
That may be better than my rubber band method.
Yeah, I got them, and they work great for Phantom Leader. It's kind of funny. So for a really card-intensive game, they work great. For the amount of cards I have right now for Blood Red Skies, I don't need the larger ones. The small little kind of 25 card holder works great for the aircraft cards. Jury for me is still out. I'm going to try one of the deck boxes to hold all my mini cards. But either way, I still have to sort them when I get out of there. So something worth trying. But I hear you picked up some decals this week.
Yeah, Kevin at Miscellaneous Miniatures worked up a sheet for me for my Stalingrad 109Gs. And it wasn't a terribly complicated sheet. At least to hear him say it, it was something he already had artwork for. He just kind of combined some unit things, insignia, whatever, on a single sheet so I could kind of have a variety of stuff from two different squadrons and some special aces that I'm working on. But he told me when he completed that sheet for me, let me know it was available, that he's so busy right now with fulfilling orders and printing stuff out and running to the post office just to fulfill standard orders that he's not accepting any custom work right now unless it's something that's kind of like this thing I just described where he already has the work done and he just has to put it on maybe a different sheet or reorder something. He's not doing anything custom because he's slammed, which I guess is a good thing. I guess everybody's home.
I guess it's a good
hobby.
thing. Hey, thanks all you assholes out there that are ordering decals. Now we can't get any custom work done. No, I'm happy to hear that because just like Armaments in Miniature, with David Schmid, that everything there, he's so busy. He's probably 6 to 8 weeks behind in his orders. It's actually good in a sense because at least we're driving some business to them, and the Blood Red Skies community's really been trying to pick up a lot of neat stuff from them. So maybe we need to find some summer interns for both those guys.
Yeah.
Take a little bit of the workload off and be able to print, package, and take things to the post office. So if you live in New Jersey and you want to be a Resin Miniatures intern, call Dave Schmidt. Send him an email. Anyway. Well, let's go ahead and move on to tonight's discussion with Kevin and Sarah from Dan Verssen Games. Welcome back to the Lead Pursuit podcast. Tonight we're going back off the reservation, leaving Warlord Games and Blood Red Skies behind. We're talking to the other parts of the crew over at Dan Verssen Games, the younger section, Kevin and Sarah. Kevin, Sarah, how you all doing tonight?
We're doing good.
Yeah, doing good.
Yeah, we're having fun.
Glad to have you guys on the podcast. I think it's pretty funny to have talked to Dan a couple times about things and then get to interview you guys because I always feel like I should have made a list of things that Dan told me that I wanted to fact check. Oh, really? Really? Was it this difficult? Was it this demanding? Or was he just being difficult? No, I'm really glad he gave us a lot of his time, and I'm looking forward to talking to y'all tonight about some things. So you got to explain it to me. How, Sarah, we're going to go to you first. How does a poor, wonderful, nice person like you get drug into this game designing and producing family? Please tell me you were a normal person and then you met Kevin and you got drug into this wargaming world.
As normal as any person could be, I suppose. Yeah, me and Kevin met actually on a dating app. We were both looking to find the one, and who knew that we would both run into each other and that would be it. And then after our second or third date, he said, "Hey, my family, they make board games and they just got a new product in and they need some help shipping out all these orders that were pre-ordered." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm a college student and I need some money. That sounds reasonable."
So it's the old Huck Finn proposition. It's like, hey, why don't my friends come over? Let's all hang out. Oh, yeah, I actually need you to do some work. You're actually going to do all of my work for me. Nice work, Kevin. Good job there.
Yeah, kind of got thrown in the deep end, went to their warehouse. I brought my roommate along at the time and met his parents, his sister, his friends, his cousin, all in one go. It was like a 16-hour work day in 105-degree SoCal summer weather in like August. And it was a miserable experience, but I got to get to know him and his family, which was great.
Well, I think that really kind of hits on what we want to talk about tonight is, all those things people don't think about in the game design and production industry. Everyone thinks, oh yeah, whatever, I'm going to press a button, hit order once Kickstarter is complete and everyone's pledged their money, and then stuff will magically show up from China and we're good.
Yeah. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, from talking to you guys, I have learned that is not entirely the case, that there's a lot of things that can go awry. Kevin, how did you really decide that, all right, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm definitely going to stay in my dad's chosen field of gaming and not go off and do something that is probably more quote unquote normal in the world's eyes?
Well, I would honestly say it just had to do with how much fun it was. As it turns out, being raised by two game designer, game developer parents, a lot of your life is based around games and rules, both seeing it on the table as well as their parenting style. And so as soon as I started playing the games and playtesting them, I started realizing, so that's why you raised me like that, or that's why you worded that constructive criticism that way, because that's how you do it in a rule book, to make sure it's perfectly clear and there's no misunderstanding.
Did you look at your parents and say, excuse me, are we talking about rules as written or rules as intended here? Because apparently you didn't word them right, because rules as written, I can go out tonight.
Yeah. But I just realized how much fun it was being able to tinker around with mechanics in games and get a sense of, here's what I want the game to feel like, but here's how the game plays like, and how do I connect those two bridges. And it was just a lot of fun, and they walked me through it. They helped me get up in the early, just like, here's how to play test. And I was rolling dice for my parents when I was like 3 years old. My mom would have me sitting on her lap. She would hand me 2d10 and ask me to toss them, and I usually threw them off the table, but they worked with me through that.
Well, see, once again, rules as written. She just said toss the dice. She didn't say toss them on the table where we could actually use them and have a valid dice roll. Nice work. Nice work. No, that's good. Well, we've talked a little bit offline as we were trying to figure out things that people would be interested in, and I really think one of the great things from talking both to Dan and then talking to you all is dispelling so many of those rumors, or I shouldn't say rumors, so many of those misconceptions about how you do things in the gaming industry, about how easy or how hard it is, and that, like any kind of job that delivers a package or a product, there's always misunderstandings between, you and the vendor that produces it, and a lot of those kind of things that you go through. Tell me a little bit about that. Since you guys have done obviously so much through Kickstarter, there's a little bit of a peril there that you think you know what you're getting, and you think you know what you're designing. You hit send, and do things always show up the way you planned when you unbox the crate?
No.
Well, that's actually more Sarah's expertise.
Yeah, actually, kind of leading back to the story of how I met Kevin's family and kind of jumped into this business, the reason I was there that day to help with their pack out was because one of the products they'd received, which was our Warfighter Modern Footlocker, it was ordered with the intention of it having a counter tray within the box. And we didn't know until we received it from our printer that the counter trays ended up being outside the box. And so we had to spend a 16-hour, it's over 2 days, I think, but 16 hours unwrapping every single footlocker, putting a counter tray inside, closing it back up, re-shrink wrapping it. And that's just one of those things of things were supposed to go a certain way. They didn't. And we had to fix it. And we told our customers and warned them it's going to be a week late because we had to do this whole process. Right. But that happens more often than we would expect. But it does happen a lot.
Like little mistakes. If we had a game come out, Castle Eater, and Castle Eater used little wooden cubes, as did Pavlov's House. Well, there was a miscommunication somewhere around the line, and the Castle Eater games received the Pavlov's House cubes instead of the Castle Eater cubes.
Right. Oops.
So the quantities were all off, and it was actually ended up being our printer's mistake. And so they were more than willing to send us the correct baggies of cubes, and then we had to open up all the games, put the right cubes in the boxes, re-shrink wrap them, and mail out the little cubes to people who had already received their games, because we didn't realize it until a customer pointed it out like a couple weeks after we shipped all the Kickstarter orders. And so then we had to ship these little baggies of cubes out to hundreds and hundreds of customers.
But that type of stuff happens maybe like once a year. It's just a small little thing, just this is outside the box, it should be in the box, or this component isn't the correct component. And then we normally get all the friends and family together, and we put the correct component in, take the incorrect component out, whatever. But maybe like 1 out of every 10 games, there's a little issue like that.
Yeah, part of working with humans, we make mistakes. And
we
make
exactly.
The whatever. Yeah.
And I'm sure, I don't know how you guys have your business relationships, but I'm sure every once in a while you're changing between either people at a printer that you're used to working with, and so they've got someone new, and so there's things that you assumed that they knew that the new guy doesn't know. The new guy or gal may go, why would they want it that way? So things you have to work through there that will always derail you. Well, what are some of those other Kickstarter specific crises, things that have come up where you say, "Oh, sure wish we'd thought of that, and we're going to include it in our planning process the next time"?
I think before we started using BackerKit, it was a big Kickstarter was a big struggle. I jumped in maybe a couple years ago, but before we started using BackerKit, and the way we managed Kickstarters was all through Kickstarter, and Kickstarter doesn't have a very good way for customers to communicate with us what they're intending to spend their money on.
Right.
And so jumping into BackerKit really changed how we did everything and made it a lot simpler. So I'm so grateful we found a system that allowed the whole Kickstarter process just to be easier on everyone.
Yeah, I've noticed that just, with a number of different Kickstarters in the way that you have to interact with them. Sometimes it can be just ludicrously painful to really kind of get all the options and everything figured out. And then for you guys, at least my experience for Thunderbolt Apache was that it was pretty straightforward. It was just one of those things of stop and only buy what you want.
Right.
Don't jump in on all the other rule systems that you can think about that are out there. So I can see how that definitely would be kind of a crisis there. Well, obviously, everything that you guys do is really, really team oriented. So even though I kind of chuckle that a lot of the games are solo or cooperative play in that sense against an AI, a lot of the effort of putting things together certainly is not a solo effort.
No.
And so let's talk a little bit about some of the key relationships out there, people that you found that are key members of your team, because obviously DVG is not a 1,000-person company here. so you guys obviously have to make those business relationships and find people that are aligned in work ethic and kind of in the same vision that you guys have. Has that been a struggle, or has it been kind of easy over time to just pick and choose from people who really want to help out, or is it a continual process?
Well, it's a process, because normally we'll get a game submission from someone, or most commonly what happens is someone will private message me and say, I really want to make a game about World War I blimps. And it's okay. How do you want to go about this? And then sending them an NDA contract, so that way what I give to him, what he gives to us stays our own, and we don't need to worry about legal hassles or anything. And I would say most of the time people come to me and say, I really want to make a game, and we message back and forth for a few weeks, and then they start to slowly fall off, and then it's a few more weeks and a few months, and then suddenly they're not responding, and it's okay. You wanted to make a game, but you just didn't really you didn't know enough about the subjects. You're going to go research it and then come back to me in 6 months. What I've been really lucky with, though, is some of the designers that I'm working with currently, Chuck Seeger, Ian Martin, Dean Brown, James Garten, they've all been working on their projects and talking with me, and we've been going back and forth. And it's more important to have a good relationship with someone, I feel, than for them to be a good game designer. And in my case, I'm lucky for both. But being able to talk to somebody and have them understand, I'm not attacking you. I'm saying the ideas you came up with are not as good as they could have been. And for them to take that, take a deep breath and say, okay, let's figure this out, is a big thing that not many people can do. So I feel really lucky that the people I work with are able to take constructive criticism from me, as well as I take constructive criticism from them.
Well, I'm sure there's always a certain ownership you feel over a rule set, game concept,
right?
Things like that makes it difficult for people to take the ego out of it, as we used to say, and just let the cards kind of fall where they do. Does the game work perfectly fine without that mechanic in it? Then maybe it wasn't essential. Maybe you'd added a little bit too much chrome over the top. But that's an interesting thing that I think a lot of game designers that I have worked with and friends that I've helped playtest their games, one of the most difficult things has been for me, especially as a playtester, to find the right words to pointedly say something is a hurdle and a huge stumbling block without making it feel like I'm attacking the whole game construct. I know I've fallen short a couple times on that when they go, you just hate the whole game. I'm like, no, I don't. I just think this one way of resolving this combat or this action is really, really hokey. So I'm sure that gets difficult. But it sounds like you guys really have kind of built a series of key relationships, and you've also built that out of former customers as well.
Yeah, someone in particular that's really helped us out, a fellow named Benjamin Chi. He has been helping us a lot, and he's been proofreading all of our cards and our rule books and our components, and he's been doing that for the past maybe 2-ish years, and his name's always in the rule book as head editor. And he has really saved our bacon, because we type rules and we think this makes sense. I played the game. I know what the rules should say. The rule's fine. And then he'll say, I haven't played the game and this sentence does not make sense. You need 2 previous sentences to lead up to this. And he's just had such a great mindset that's helped us, as well as he's now heading up other projects within the company.
Well, and I think that's something that a lot of playtesters forget, and I know it kind of came out for us this week doing some of our playtest work, that there's a point where you say, I'm glad everybody's enjoying playing this game. We now need to find our friends who haven't played the game and drag them into it because we're not going to see, we can't see the forest for the trees. We've become so comfortable with the rules and all the changes and all the tweaks that it's secondhand to us. We don't know if it's truly as intuitive as it needs to be. So I can imagine the value of having a trusted agent you can bring in and go, okay, proofread it, make sure it makes sense, and make sure that we're not lacking a key preface somewhere in there to any one of the rules.
Yeah, it's been kind of fun, because within the last year, people like Benjamin Chi that we've worked with, he went from editing himself to having other people that edit with him that he solely communicates with. And they're an extra set of eyes. They may have other talents. They may understand other game systems and stuff. But he then compiles the whole list and then hands it to Sarah or I and says, here are the 300 edits for the rule book that you just gave us. And this is going to take you 10 hours to put in, but it's going to be well worth it. And so It's been kind of weird, a multi-tier system, because as long as I've done DVG, it's always been, I'm working on a game, or I'm working on a game with one other person. But now it's like there's battle pack creators that I'm kind of in charge of, that Sarah's kind of in charge of. There's other games that are coming out that I'm kind of in charge of. And so it's like this whole web that's starting to build out of just people that I used to talk with on a friendly basis on Facebook.
That's good that you have a cadre of people that you've kind of generated that are trusted agents, and I know I sometimes overuse that term, but it's one of those things where you're trusting them with giving you rudder steers, left and right rudder steers as to where the game and where the rules and where all of that is going to go. So that's one of those things that it's pretty important. Well, you guys have told me that also some of your business customers have definitely become close friends, and some of the things they've shown up and participated in.
Yeah, we got married, me and Kevin, about 7 months ago now, and we invited a couple of our customers who have become friends and business partners to our wedding. Most of them couldn't make it, as a lot of our business friends are in Australia and other parts of the US as well. Yeah. But a couple did get to make it. Chuck Siegert, who's designing Zero Leader, with his beautiful wife, Angel, were able to make it, as well as our friend Dougie Wong, who lives in San Francisco, and his wife as well. They got to come to our wedding. So it was really great to meet them in person.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. And, especially now in this time with, a lot of distancing and everything else, it's good to have games that feel a little bit more like community than just a business relationship. Although every time I look at my credit card bill, I'm like, well, let me see. How many times was DVG on it this month? So it's one of those things that it's always good to feel a little bit of a partnership, and that, especially as a game customer, that your money is going to an organization and a game design corporation that actually cares about people and not just about churning out the product. So how have you guys found the public relations part of that, of balancing the times when you've got to kind of be that corporate face, yet there's always, at least from all of my interaction with you guys, there's always such a great interest in the individual gamer's enjoyment and getting it right?
Well,
Yeah,
do you want to take this?
Yeah. It's been tough, definitely, to find a balance between the personal and the business. And we've crossed over a lot, I think, by using our personal Facebooks and stuff to answer a lot of questions. But that's how we try to separate it, is the updates and the formal information always comes from Kickstarter or our work emails. That way, that's kind of the formal updates and information that we send out. But then on Kickstarter, we make sure to manage all the groups and try to jump into all the questions and people posting their what they call shelfies now.
Yeah,
shelfies.
games.
And we love seeing that, and we love talking to people and saying, oh yeah, what was your favorite soldier to use in Warfighter, or asking questions about what they want to see next in our products. And we definitely blur the lines, I think, of personal business, but it's fun because it's become a family. All these customers, they're people that care about us and we care about them and make us want to do better because there's faces to these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as a consumer, it's funny for me to compare the Facebook and YouTube marketing, and I'll pitch you guys versus Games Workshop because it's kind of funny. So you guys are out there and you're like, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's some things we're unboxing. And it may not be the slickest, fanciest video, but really who cares? Because all we want to see is what the components look like. Really, I don't care if you can hire an artist who can do, multi-layer animations. Don't worry. I want to see what's in the box. But the key to me is the difference in the messaging. And that it's always so much about, hey, here's some cool things you're going to like, and here's some neat things. Whereas I feel like, Games Workshop's messaging lately has been, hey, give us some money and maybe we'll give you some limited edition miniatures in October. And I'm like, that's like Kickstarter, but with no reward. I'm paying you now for something I'm not going to see for a long time, and it's really not something I need or want. So I think it's interesting in the games world to see how some companies have changed and evolved, and other companies are still stuck in, what some of us call kind of the 1990s mindset that sure you can interact with your customers via this crazy thing called the internet, but they still don't have the transparency, which I think you guys definitely do, which in some ways is good, but in some ways, I mean, it does allow people kind of a peek behind the curtain, and it's got to be at least probably a little stressful to you all.
Yeah, it's I was going to say on my end, I tend to comment a lot on Facebook. If somebody will have a question about a game or post up an AAR of something that they played, and I always respond to them as if I were, I don't know, a friend of mine posting up a video game that they just played of, oh, wow, that's really cool. Because I am excited when other people play our games, and it has led to me sending friend requests, and I tend to share a lot of like silly pictures and memes and mac and cheese type photos because Sarah loves mac and cheese. And I tag her in that stuff. And then people, like work people, will then comment on that saying, oh, my daughter loves mac and cheese too. Isn't that funny? And it's like, we were talking about making a game 5 minutes ago, and now you're commenting on my wife's photo about mac and cheese. And it's just like such a weird, we're now friends. This is what we do.
Well, so I have to ask, because my own social media feed has been bizarre in the last 2 months. Has it gotten a little uncomfortable at times, though, now in at least the era of coronavirus and COVID-19, where you sometimes go, maybe I don't always want to be Facebook friends with everybody that I'm business associated with.
Yeah, we've made I wouldn't say strict, but we do our best not to have anything political on any of our Facebooks, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about games and to, post mac and cheese memes and whatever else, So we've done our best to avoid anything, either commenting on other people's stuff or our own, just because it doesn't do any good.
Yeah. And I think that's the tough thing these days, is to figure out the fine balance. I mean, for me, it's extremely difficult because I have a lot of friends who I really value their intellectual opinion. And so even when we're on opposite sides of a discussion, they'll post something and I'll feel a need to weigh in. And then I'll realize that the discussion between my friends and I is providing maybe too much information to everybody else who knows me either in a photography way or in a game organization kind of way. So it's one of those bizarre things about social media, and I think it's it's a challenge we all have. And I like the way you guys have done it. So I'll be honest, it's really nice to see the level of interaction of you all in either specific DVG game groups or in solitaire gaming groups or whatever. It seems like you guys are at least out there commenting, responding, and providing a face to a company that could be faceless and could just ship games and ask you to give them your money, as many do. But I think it's a lot more helpful than what some organizations do with only their official media outlet.
Yeah, and I've always felt that if you want to find political stuff, you can find it. But I
just come to my feed, and all my friends will share it with you.
Yeah,
along with their opinions too.
Yeah, but I don't really care for posting that stuff, and I figure that we might as well put some positivity and share some tasty how to make this meal or how to do this, set up a cute date or, a mac and cheese type meme.
Yeah.
I think those are a lot more fun and people enjoy that type of stuff more.
See, I had this brilliant idea this last week. I was going to take a lot of the plate openings from Robert Asperin's Another Fine Myth series and start putting those fake quotes out in my Facebook feed because they're all generally pretty funny quotes that he wrote. And the problem is, my friends who haven't read Another Fine Myth or Myth Adventures or any one of those, they thought I was being serious. And so there was a little bit of everybody commenting on these, and I'm like, if you really think George Custer said, do we have a plan? No, that wasn't anything said by George Custer. But, it's funny, things like that. My problem is even when I try to be witty and try to post like a cat photo out there or something, you always find that one person who's going to take it wrong. And it gets frustrating. But, that's, I think, one of the interesting things about social media and gaming and the kind of personalities that are in gaming. Because I'll be honest, I deal in 3 very different worlds. So I have my day job that is very government-centric and very U.S. and foreign military-centric and those kind of personalities. Then I have my aviation photography world, which is like gaming grognards, but stranger. and then I have gaming. And I'll be honest, I think in the wargaming and miniatures community and things like that I run in, it's a lot more accepting, and it's really funny because I really enjoy interacting a lot with them more than some of these people that I served on active duty for 20 years with. I'm like, I really don't want to see what you're posting on Facebook. I really want the funny cat memes and apparently mac and cheese photos. So, yeah, I guess the scary thing is now if you post those, my wife's going to see them and she loves mac and cheese, and this is just going to create this whole problem for me. So, this may not work well. I may have to put the Versens over in their own little Facebook group and hide it from my wife because that might not work out well. So who knows?
Yeah.
We post a lot of cat memes too.
Well, and that's the funny thing. So I thankfully don't post my cats that much, but I will happily go out and find a cat meme any day and respond to everybody's pain and angst and everything else on social media via cat meme. And I'll be honest, I think the Lead Pursuit podcast team doesn't know how to take me when I do that. They're a little too straight-laced for that, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, the community itself. So I'm not a DVG community person. I'm getting back into DVG games, and so it's kind of funny. So how have you guys really built a community and got the word about the games out there? Do you have people that demo the games at certain events? Do you ship stuff out and say, okay, we're going to send it to a couple game stores, see what they think, and they're going to be kind of our face for the game? How does that work for DVG?
Well, I'll make this real simple. The answer is Sarah. Take it away.
Yeah, it's a mix. We have a few customers who regularly go to conventions in their area for us, and they demo. And we have a pretty good system of, if you're willing to demo games for us, send us some photos, and then we'll send you maybe a product to help you demo, and just kind of this good relationship of mutually benefiting each other. We also have I would say most of our marketing and kind of getting the community involved is kind of what you talked about earlier, just being really transparent. I think that has grown our community the most because people want to stick around if they know what to expect and they know what's coming and, okay, yeah, it's delayed, but at least you're telling us something.
Well, I think there's also a little consistency in the product, because once you've played a leader product or played a warfighter product, you generally know, okay, I know what the next expansion or a different game in that series is going to be like. And I'll be honest, the stressor for me is to see things on the DVG site that I'm like, I've never played anything in that series, but I wonder what it's like. Do I go to Board Game Geek? Do I go watch the video? I'm like, I'm just going to end up buying it at some point. Put it on the list down below the next set of miniatures I should be painting. But make a plan to go try that, because I think that's one of the difficult things for me, and maybe it just is the era that I come from, is I still have to see these things and have a frame of reference. I can watch a lot of unboxings, but man, sometimes those still can't sell me the way going to a convention, seeing the product there and going, absolutely. And, I use the example for the lead pursuit team, how we got involved in Blood Red Skies and why we did so much with, Dust 1947 as well, was not because we looked on the internet and said, oh, those miniatures look kind of cool, but because we're sitting there at Adepticon and it's either John Russell with Warlord or Paolo himself for Dust, showing us the miniatures, talking about the fluff, pushing miniatures around the table, and we go, wow, this is kind of cool. This is a lot cooler than the other systems we saw. So that obviously is an interesting way for you guys to have to interact. Have you found some people that demo recurrently for you? I mean, you said you have a few people that you send things out with. Does it seem to hit enough of the big conventions?
Yeah, it hits pretty well at a lot of their local conventions. I mean, we're always looking for more. We used to go to some local conventions as well, but as the company's grown, we've had less and less time, unfortunately, for that fun. So we're always looking for more ways to get into conventions. It's just, from what we've experienced, going to conventions can be a bit of a pricey experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to attend a convention and just think about it as a game designer, marketer kind of person, and then forget about all the other cool things you can spend money on. How many of your games did you sell? 0, but I bought a lot of the cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Spend more money than you made.
Yeah.
A lot of our distributors, though, do attend the bigger conventions like Alliance and ACD and a few others like that. And so we've seen our products at a lot of conventions. Maybe not demoed as much as we would like, but they're there. And that's what we hear a lot from customers, too, is we got to see, we saw Warfighter on the shelf, or someone was playing it in the demo room or whatever. So we're always glad to hear that our products are getting out there, even if we can't, unfortunately, get out there.
Yeah, and I think that's also kind of the interesting dynamic of a solo or even slightly co-op game, is that a co-op game at least is a little bit easier to demo, but it's sometimes kind of hard to demo a solo game in that sense, because it's not like you're playing opposite of somebody and there's a direct interaction. It's the guy kind of standing there walking you through each of the steps, but still something interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, and funnily enough, Chuck Siegert also demos.
He goes to a lot of conventions.
Yeah, and so it was just really weird because at one point, Sarah and I realized he was talking to both of us, and he was talking to me all about Zero Leader and how to get that going and what the components should be and whatever. And he was also talking with Sarah about there's an upcoming convention. What should I bring? How should I do that? Can I get a banner? That type of stuff. And so it's just like, wow, he has the presence of mind to be able to talk with both of us about both of those very different subjects.
I remember us jokingly fighting of, wait, you stop messaging Chuck. I need him to respond to me. And
Yeah.
stop messaging him.
That's a valuable person to have on your team.
Yeah,
Who'll do that.
he's great. He's fun to work with.
Well, so I've been trying to avoid talking about it. I've been looking seriously at the clock on the podcast counter here, saying I'm not going to talk about Zero Leader. I'm not going to talk about Zero Leader. We're going to talk about everything else. Okay, let's freaking talk about Zero Leader.
Let's talk about it.
Oh, I don't want to because it's gonna cause me to want to pitch in when it comes out. But okay, give me the big pitch for Zero Leader. Why Zero Leader? Why did we decide to do this?
Well, it was we came out with Corsair, and it did pretty well on Kickstarter, and geez, I just keep saying his name, Chuck Siegert, actually backed it at a level that allowed him to name one of the pilots, and he named an F4F Wildcat. And he enjoyed the game so much. And he said, there's a whole opposite side of Corsair. There's the events of World War II from the Japanese side, the Japanese Air Force and Navy side. And those are rarely discussed in games. I want to do that. And he sent me this like big old paragraph saying, here's what I want to do. Here's my general timeline. And I said, that's great. Talk to me when you've done some research and we'll get back and forth and we'll get this going. And I was expecting it to go like 90% of the people who have messaged me about games saying, I have this great idea, but it's a lot of work to do. And he then messaged me back like a month later and said, I've done all the research. I know all the planes that the Japanese Air Force and Navy used, and I want to make this the most realistic, leader, cool game that we can make. And him and I have spent quite a few hours on the phone going over ideas and how to implement and show that, like, the Japanese military generally had fewer supplies, fewer men, fewer resources than the Americans, but they had a lot of spirit that kind of made up for that.
Well, and I'm going to go ahead and get a little out over my skis and say I'm sure it also probably becomes difficult to play a campaign as the Japanese, because after a while you're throwing bad men and bad equipment at progressively better U.S. equipment.
Yeah. It's we've set up the game so that way at the beginning in 1941, 42, it is a breeze. It is easy peasy lemon squeezy to complete those campaigns.
Oh, look, buffaloes again. Oh, gee, what are we going to do with those? Let's just shoot them all down.
Yeah. Oh, the Tomahawks, the Warhawks. It's like, the Zeros could spin circles around those.
Right.
And then throughout the years, we slowly tinkered with a dozen different gears to make it slightly more difficult. So it's not like in 43, you're playing normal, and then 44, it's, okay, subtract 2 from all your die rolls. You know, that just like hitting a player with a hammer. We've done a dozen little tweaks here and there, so that way each campaign you play, you feel the difficulty increasing, but you don't know where. You don't know why. You just know that more of your pilots are falling out of the sky. And we did a lot of research. He did, mostly Chuck, and came up with the airplanes, came up with some new stats for the airplanes. So you played Corsair or Thunderbolt, right?
I've played Thunderbolt. My buddy has the copy of Corsair that I bought from you guys because I figured if I ended up with 2 DVG games on my table, I would be in the doghouse.
Yeah, well, we decided he wanted to put in a robustness stat to show how tough these airplanes are, and especially to show that, like, the Japanese aircraft, like the Zero, had very thin material going around their wings and the frame of the airplane, but they made more sturdy aircraft as the war went on. And so now aircraft can adjust how much damage they suffer when they're attacked based on how much, what the robustness is. And then,
nice.
Yeah. And airplanes also have a maneuvering stat that allows them to more easily maneuver around the enemy bandits, in this case, the Americans. And it's just a whole new feel of now each pilot feels unique and different, and the aircraft they fly feel different from another aircraft, which makes sense because you want a Zero to feel different from a Tony.
Well, and that I'm going to pick on your dad in absentia here. So if there was one thing that frustrated me out of the original Hornet Leader and the original Thunderbolt Apache was that other airplanes really only felt different in the loads or roles they had.
Right.
So you didn't really have a feel that the action of an F-14 was any different other than it shot different missiles and it didn't feel different than the F-18 in some of those ways. But, once again, what was the focus of the game? It wasn't necessarily the dogfight. It was, I am going to blaze through these fighters. I'm going to get to a target, blaze through the defenses, and then hope I make it home and don't get some unlucky event that causes me to lose a perfectly good airplane. And I also have to ask this. I mean, the victory conditions and the way you win, I say win in air quotes, in a lot of the leader games, most of these missions are in a sense foregone conclusions. The campaign is either going to be a dramatic defeat for you or you're going to claw your way to victory. Did you have to do anything different for the Japanese? Because unfortunately, I mean, you have a side that is either, like you said, it's blazingly easy in the early part of the war, and then it's a foregone conclusion they're going to lose towards the later campaigns.
Yeah. what we did to let the players know is the early campaigns have an introductory or a standard difficulty. And then starting in like 43, they start to go to like standard to advanced. And then 44 and 45, they're mostly just expert. So we let the player know that these later war campaigns are just going to be more difficult on you. So that way a new time player doesn't start up in 1945, get demolished, and then say, this game's too hard. It's no. Play it 4 years prior.
Did you have to sculpt the scope of it any? I mean, to say, okay, we know they're going to lose the entire air engagement, but for the focus of zero leader, is it possible for the zeros to come out on top?
Well, the plan is that the game has a difficulty curve that increases throughout the years. So a smart player who's playing both tactically within that mission, as well as strategically of which pilots do I take in and out for this day versus I'll need them more for future days, can play and beat all of the campaigns. But as the campaigns go on, they're going to need a little bit more luck on their side. If this die roll goes either way, I either shoot down the enemy Corsair or he'll flip me around and shoot me down on his turn. And so it's, but in like 41, 42, it's you're just spinning circles around those buffaloes and tomahawks.
Yeah, we've run into an interesting similarity in working on some of the Vietnam playtesting is that the problem we have is we get to a point in the Vietnam Air War that so many things external to the airplanes are deadly, whether it's radar-guided anti-aircraft fire, whether it's surface-to-air missiles, that you end up in a point for us where in our proposal we had to say we have to assume certain things happen outside the scope of the battle we're fighting. Because if I fly in there and I fire, a SAM at every single one of these airplanes across the board, the odds of the player having any airplanes by the end of turn 3 pretty small. So we've found ourselves having to say, all right, what's the purpose of the game? For people to have fun, for people to get a flair of air combat. So let's not make it 100% historically accurate because we're not simulating the whole strike package. We're simulating 4 of the F4s or 6 of the F4s. So I think there's always an interesting compromise when you sit there and you say the foregone conclusion may be, like in our example, that an airplane was going to get shot down. Let's just make sure it's not one of the players' airplanes. Let's make sure it's something that to them is expendable. So that way there's not a feeling that, all right, why have I built all these aircrew and pilots up just to get them bagged in this one scenario? Because unlike the leader games, that's part of the game. That's part of managing your aircraft and managing your pilots. It's not so in Blood Red Skies. So it's, in a sense, we unfortunately have a little bit more emotional baggage that I can't just pick off elements of the strike package as they head in.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm learning a lot about the history of the struggles, basically, that the Japanese military went through, of how difficult it was and how they had not planned on facing such a formidable force. And just the turnaround time that the Americans had of, you blew up one of our carriers, don't worry, 3 days later we'll have a new one.
Exactly.
And the Japanese are like, we started this war with 6, and we're not getting any more, and you just destroyed it, that's it. And it's just such a weird, it's such a weird feeling from Corsair of you feel like how America normally feels like in Hornet or Phantom of it's, you're launching missiles and you got radar guided and you're dropping bombs and smart bombs and just the goal is to get as many victory points as possible. Whereas in Zero, half the goal is getting victory points, half the goal is keeping your guys alive so that they can get you victory points down.
Right. Well, that's interesting. That's a interesting take on the model and the way the interaction goes, because I'm still bad. I haven't opened my Phantom Leader copy. That's a goal for the weekend. But, I think it'll be interesting to play through that where, unlike Hornet Leader, where I really don't want to lose anybody, with Phantom Leader, I know I'm going to have to go in the mindset that people are going to get bagged by SAMs. People are not going to get picked up. It's not necessarily Hornet Leader playing Gulf War, playing like in the old one, the Central American scenarios where you show up and you're like, ooh, MiG-21s. I'm so scared. That I think it'll be interesting to see how you guys handle some of those things in Zero Leader. Because like I said, it becomes a very asymmetric fight in the big picture, even though individual dogfights may not have been that way.
Yeah, but I think most importantly, it's fun. I really enjoy working on Zero. I enjoy talking with Chuck about Zero, and it's a learning opportunity. This is the first game that I've been fully in charge of, that he's just talking to me, I'm talking to him, and at some point we're going to have a printed game, and that's going to be in the DVG Legacy. So there's a little bit of pressure, a little bit of anxiety with this of, let's make this the best dang game that we can. And so far, it's coming out really good, and he's been posting up photos of it every few weeks about new updates of new pilots or campaigns, or, hey, we just added in the Oka, or, whatever.
Yeah, I've been really interested following some of those things, and I've tried to not pay too much attention because it'll just make me want to play the game sooner rather than later. So I'm going to try to ignore some of those. Well, what are some of the other things you have in the pipeline? I know we've talked about Vietnam. Are there some other expansions going on in there for other systems?
Yeah, so right now, what we've been working on during our home isolation is expansions for a couple of the later games. We've done a Phantom expansion, a Hornet expansion, and an Israeli Air Force expansion. And we're just about done with them. We've just sent them off to be proofed by Benjamin Chi. And we hope to run a Kickstarter for that maybe early June, I think is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
We wanted to wait, obviously, a while to do another Kickstarter and let people financially.
Thank you for letting my bank account recover.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also why we wanted to have our next Kickstarter be something a little on the smaller side of just a couple later expansions, rather than the project we're going to do after that, which is probably Warfighter Fantasy.
Yeah, or Warfighter Vietnam.
Yeah, depending on which one gets done first.
Yeah.
But yeah, the leader expansions are going to be big, and I think everyone will look forward to that. People have wanted leader expansions for a while, and we just did a couple for Tiger and Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
Right.
So we decided to do more.
Well, so, and it's kind of funny when Dan was on and he said, Warfighter Fantasy, it's easy for me to wrap my brain around Warfighter, military contractor, warfighter, counterterrorism, warfighter Vietnam even. I'm like, okay, whatever. We can do small unit actions, and it's not truly skirmish, it's small unit actions. Yeah, it's one of those weird things. It fits in its own niche. So tell me, Warfighter Fantasy, is it a dungeon crawl? What is it? How does fantasy and warfighter mix?
Well, the dungeon crawling is very similar, and I know this is going to sound weird to people who played Warfighter. It's very similar mechanically to shooting terrorists in the Middle East. It still has its to hit roll. It still has its cover roll. Monsters as well as the hero have hit locations, because most monsters have armor. At least in some places, like a beetle may have extra armor on its back, but its face and legs are more unarmored. The heroes have armor. And so it adds a whole new feel to the game when you roll and you're trying to hit a specific area on this giant beetle or whatever. And you know that he has a cover 5 on a D20, maybe like his 6 to 12. But you know that he has a cover 2 at where his head is. And so now you're deciding, do I want to make a big old heavy strike? At which point I'm going to do I have a really good chance to hit, but I won't be breaking his cover that well. Or do I want to do a more precise strike that's a little harder to hit, but I can adjust where I hit him after I make the roll? And so like some monsters, it's just clobber him over the head with a big sword. But other monsters, you want maybe your thief with a dagger to come out first, because the thief can better aim where she's hitting and won't do as much damage, but you won't do any damage if the fighter just keeps hitting the beetle in its armor.
That's interesting. So kind of taking the burst rate and ammunition choices and kind of turning that into weapon skill or proficiency or things like that, I guess.
Yeah. There's strong attacks, normal attacks, and fast attacks, and each of them adjust where both how many rolls you make, as well as what you need to hit, what penetration you have with that type of attack. And so you start getting into decisions of, I want to get the big greatsword. It doesn't hit that well, but it has a high penetration or something. Or maybe the axe does more damage and an equal amount of penetration, and the club does huge penetration, but very little chance to hit. And so now you're kind of waffling between which of these weapons do I want to bring. And there's NPS and squaddies, which are called henchmen and something else. I haven't worked on the game in a while, but so you can bring them along and they'll have their own weapons and gear and skills just like normal warfighter. And so you can have a wizard, a thief, a fighter, and a cleric all playing with just one player soldier, because the rest are just simple die rolls, or maybe they have a weapon type thing. But that way you can have a full party without all the headache of it.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of cool that you can step between genres so easily in the warfighter system, because, you know, to be quite honest, there's times that I get tired of aerial war. I'll be honest, you know, and I had that day going back through between Board Game Geek and Tabletop Simulator, looking at all the old micro games and things like that. And Roger Garish and I were talking about it, and he said, you know, hey, when's the last time you played Melee or Olympia War, or Olympia Holy War, any one of those? And it's kind of funny that it's nice to have a solo system that is familiar, but you really totally change what you're playing. And so you're not necessarily playing shooting terrorists, you're now playing either doing, you know, Warfighter Vietnam, Warfighter Fantasy, things like that. I think that'll be really interesting.
Exactly. That's the goal, is that we take what everyone loves about the fantasy worlds they know and everything they love about the Warfighter system that we've so painstakingly made into so many different series and smash them together. And, you know, sometimes you just need to go kill a dragon instead of a terrorist.
Any plans to license any cool IP from anybody to make some specific Warfighter Fantasy expansions?
We wish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I just
cool.
We wish, but no, not at this time.
Oh, yeah, that's always one of the funny things for me, is that anytime we've talked about Blood Red Skies, and Andy and I have sat back and said, you know, what would be really interesting? It's always funny to find the what's the cool IP you can get, and then approach those people and they go, yeah, I don't think so. That's a lot of money. So that's all right.
We've approached a few people to do a few of those types of projects. Yeah.
Well, but you know, that's also one of the things that most people just go, oh yeah, it's just a simple licensing agreement, right? Is what everyone external to the game world says, and you guys know it's different.
Yeah.
We actually, a few years ago, Dan he emailed Fox about getting a Aliens license to make a Warfighter Aliens. But and that would have been just the coolest thing ever. But with the legality and the contracts and here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, here's what you're allowed to do, you can never insinuate this.
And this is how much it's going to cost you.
Right. And pay us this huge amount up front, at which point you can't use Kickstarter or crowdfunding or anything.
That was the big thing, yeah.
And so it's just like, if we were a 100-person company who had, you know, all the money in the world, it'd be really cool. But as we're a 4-person company, we're not at the level to be talking with Fox about Warfighter Aliens.
Absolutely. As disappointing as that is, I understand.
Yeah, the Versens are big Aliens fans, so they would have loved it.
Yeah, that would definitely get me into playing Warfighter. And it's not that I don't want to. It's funny, like you guys know, I've got it on the DLC for Tabletop Simulator. I've had so many other things that I'm like, I really need to go figure it out. So I paid money for this DLC. I should go play it rather than just looking at the rules. So it's like everything else. Even digital ones and zeros sometimes sit in the closet of shame for a while before they get used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking for a while. Are there any other projects or any other efforts that you all are going through that you want to talk about before we wrap this up tonight?
Well, there is some of the potential projects down the line that we have. We, of course, Zero Leader with Chuck Seeger. We're planning on kickstarting soon, getting going soon. I also have Sopwith Fokker Leader with Ian Martin, a World War I Leader series game, except a little bit more nitty gritty on the tactical side of like maintaining your aircraft and stuff like that. We also have with James Garton an Abrams leader in development that would use the similar rules from Tiger Sherman, except in modern day 90s era Abrams running across Iraq.
That sounds good. That sounds pretty cool. Anything customer service or social media wise, Sarah, that we need to know is going on?
I guess it's always good to know what projects are almost done being printed.
Yeah.
Yeah, since you're either the bearer of good news or bad news, there's
Right.
nothing in between.
Yeah, so coming from the printer, actually leaving the printer in about 10 days, we have our Battle Pack Wave 1, which is, I think, about a dozen different expansions for World War II and modern day warfighter, as well as For What Remains, which was done by David Thompson, who is another one of our outside designers that we absolutely love working with.
Yeah.
He did Pavlov's House and Castle Eater as well, and he's working on another game for us, probably for fall or winter this year. So those should be coming in. If they leave the printer in about 10 days, they'll be here probably mid-June. And then after that, we have Fleet Commander Nimitz, Tiger Leader, and Thunderbolt Apache Leader all being reprinted with expansions. And that's probably another 2 months away.
Okay.
As well as Battle Pack Wave 2.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for taking some time to talk with me on the Lead Pursuit podcast. I appreciate it. It's always good to get out of our comfort zone and talking about the games and game systems that really we've spent a lot of time, beating the bushes about for Blood Red Skies, for Bolt Action, those things. Because I'll be honest, I enjoy playing a lot of y'all's games. I unfortunately haven't devoted as much time as I'd like to. But now that we're playing a lot more solo games, at least for a while. I think it's a cool opportunity to get in and get involved with some of those games.
Definitely. And it was great talking to you too today. We enjoyed hanging out and
Absolutely. You guys are welcome anytime, even if our listeners roll their eyes and go, we don't want to talk about fantasy and we don't care about warfighter fantasy. I care about it, so you can listen to it on the podcast. Tough luck. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you all later.
All right.
Good. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, Brett and I are back with some listener questions that we have pulled off of the Blood Red Skies Ready Room. Well, let's talk about my least favorite one first, Brett, and then we'll get to your least favorite, because I'm running the podcast. So let's talk about swarm tactics. What do you think about swarm tactics? I think they suck.
I saw a comment on there and there was like a thread or something on the Ready Room about how that works. And I could see that being a real pain in the butt where you're just booming people out with these low skill guys. I haven't encountered that myself, but I could see how that tactic could be something that might rear its ugly head at a tournament setting or something like that.
Yeah, I think there are some standard things we see that people play the swarm tactics early on. Some people never graduate past them, I'll be honest, especially in the competitive area. Because in other games, it's still a thing to have to defeat. So like if you play X-Wing, I guess swarm tactics are still a big thing there. Don't play X-Wing much, not at all competitively. But the thing is, in Blood Red Skies, a lot of people kind of move away from it because if you have a bad set of rolls, it can kind of turn on you. Because what I'll say is it's a tough tactic to defeat, simply because when you have a swarm of pilot skill 2 aircraft, they move last, so all of your fancy guys have to move across the board. Then they move and they pick one or two airplanes and they gang up and they roll a shit ton of dice. So it's kind of like playing 40K against the Tau. It's kind of weird, but
it kind of sounds like the way I play my 109s, regardless of pilot skill level, and then fly the hell out of there if I'm smart.
Well, the thing is, it is a viable tactic, and I say that not because I want people to go out and fly the swarm, but because it can be difficult to defend against. There are ways by keeping some of your more experienced pilots back and how you stagger your aircraft, you can make things a little bit tougher, because they still have to knock you out of your advantage. So I always tell people, if you are facing a swarm, move slowly across the board so that you definitely get to an advantage state with everybody that you can before they become a factor. And oh, by the way, if you end up with a swarm behind you and you're playing scenario 1 or 2, you didn't set your board set up very well. But But if you at least have them coming at you, move slow, get everyone up to advantage, and then they really have to rely on you failing your maneuver checks. So if you fail your maneuver check, odds are generally it's obviously going to be one of your lower skill guys. So the way you can defeat that is by leading with your high skill guys, because they're going to move last anyway. The swarm is, because they're all pilot skill 2. So you can move your higher skill guy out there first. And if you figure out the distance right, I mean, if you have, let's say, a standard 18-inch spread, if someone's playing a competitive game, you can use your first quick move to get in and start knocking people down via outmaneuver. Now, the problem is you are out and you are exposed. They're not going to tell you. They're just going to rely on you to be at an advantage level lower than them and start shooting you. So I would not use Doug's standard dive into the attack, where I give up being advantaged and drop down to neutral. I would first turn move slow, see how they move. Second turn, if you can, without diving and without losing all your advantage, move into a position to start knocking their advantage level down, then do so. Otherwise, you kind of got to turtle up and kind of make them come to you, so that they can't continually pick a whole bunch of aircraft to gang up on, because they're going to try to take deflection shots because they don't want to take head-ons, because head-ons means they're going to risk getting a boom chit. They want low probability of kill deflections so they can just rack up a bunch of boom chits, never shoot anybody down, but boom chit you out of the game quickly. So.
It's funny because Steve and I have been working so hard on this campaign thing, and now we're actually trying to create a shareable document that reflects what we've evolved. But it's informed a lot of my thought process on tactics and stuff. And I think we didn't intentionally do this, but I'm sure there were times early in our campaign where we sort of exploited either the pilot skill in one way or the other. Either try to flood the board with as many pilots as we can by putting in as many low skill guys as we could, because it's point based, or kind of did the other thing. I know there were a lot of games I ran where I wanted to put as many high skill guys in there as I could, so I just kind of worked that angle, and we didn't really think about it beyond that. We were just filling up the points right for our list before each game. But the more games we played, we started thinking, when we start writing up this campaign thing, we ought to probably put some kind of limiter on that. And what we've come to is when we build our elements for a scenario, everybody on the duty roster has a specific position, right? So I'll use American terminology. You'll have your squadron commander, or I guess it's a squadron commander in the U.S. Air Force back then, but then your element leader, and then your wingmen, right? The lowest ranked guys. So it'd be kind of commensurate with like your element leader would be like a pilot skill 3. He's probably probably pilot skill 3, might be pilot skill 4, but he has that designated position. So in our roster, if you will, we have maybe 3 elements led by an element leader. Each one has like 3 wingmen. And when we now field a force for a game, if I'm going to put that element leader on the table, because let's say maybe he's really attractive because he's a pilot skill 4 or pilot skill 3, so he's one of my more advanced guys, and I really want to make sure he's on the board. If I put him on the board, he has to be accompanied by one of his designated wingmen, who's likely going to be a pilot skill 2. And the same thing's going to happen for the next element leader. So what I mean by that is I can't then put 2 of my highest skill guys and not put low skill guys. And conversely, I can't put just wingmen out there like a swarm for kind of approach, because I'd have to, that wingman only gets to come when his element leader comes. And I think that's kind of a cool narrative way to do it. And I think our games will be more balanced in that regard. But it's funny we're talking about that swarm tactic, because I think we became almost sensitive to it, just noticing the way we were playing, like, oh, you know what, we probably shouldn't be allowed to do that, whether it was one way or the other.
I think there's going to be some optional, I say optional, they're going to be probably mandatory rules in either the 1/72nd scale rule set that we call Big Red Skies. They may be in Midway, but some mandatory maximum squadron sizes. And I think it's going to end up being 8. I think there was a debate between is it 8 or is it 10? But the purpose is to keep people from having both a large boom chit generation capability and a boom chit absorbing capability. Because if you think about it, when you have 8 aircraft, it is going to take quite a while for those guys to get boom chitted out unless you start attriting airplanes down. So long story short, there's a couple ways to get around it. Generally, my answer is if you play somebody who likes to play swarm tactics more than once, you just stop playing them. And say, come on, grow up, join the rest of us. But trust me, I understand. I understand people like to play competitively and don't necessarily play historical formations, just like they don't necessarily paint historical, styles of aircraft and stuff like that. So to each his own. If anyone else knows other tactics that work, please share that with us. We've had a little bit of a discussion, but we're always open to talking about more tactics and more ways to defeat the swarm. Now, your least favorite rules exploit. I was surprised about this one. Tell me what happened in your Scenario 7 games.
Oh man! So in our campaign, my campaign with Steve, he and I have played Scenario 7 a bunch of times. It's not, the odds aren't high. It's not the highest odd thing to roll for it to come up, but just look at the dice. We've played that mission probably more than anything else in our campaign. Out of 12 games, I think we've played it like 5 times. Anyway, it always went kind of like it's always gone before, bombers flying across the table and me doing my best to try to shoot them down before they get to the target. But Steve, being a wily coyote, figured out, you know what if I just put my bombers in high cover and fly them around the board in high cover until they're as close to the target on the far table edge, and then bring them on. So in one turn, they're dropping bombs, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, what the F? There's no way that could be legal. I mean, Andy Chambers himself would not allow that. Wait a minute. Yeah. Oops.
Well, yeah, no discredit to Steve. I mean, he's just a smart guy, and I think he was like, I don't think he looked at it like an exploit. He's like, hey, what, can I do that? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Try it. Let's see. And it worked. Maybe it almost worked too well because I kind of was like, dang, I remember thinking targets were hard to destroy completely.
Yeah, well, when you're not on the damn board, they're hard to destroy. I mean, when you're on the board, they're hard to destroy. When you're not, they're easy to destroy because you've got one turn that you're going to be shot at before you hit the target.
Yeah, it was a lot of turns where there's no airplanes on the table, which was kind of boring.
Yeah, okay, guess what? Yeah, if all your aircraft are in high cover, I'm going to consider you tabled. You can go home now, Steve. But we asked Andy. And what did Andy say?
Andy said he intended for that to be something you could do. So,
damn it, Andy! You're supposed to take my side, not Steve's side. Yeah. So Andy himself said, "Yeah, that there's no problem with laden aircraft being in high cover." Okay, Andy, I love you like a brother. Thanks for designing Blood Red Skies. I am not allowing laden aircraft in any of my scenarios into high cover. You will fight your way across the board and you will fight your way back out. Come on, grow a pair. No, I can understand it. So the part of the reasoning behind it, as Andy explained, was if you wanted to have the big dogfight raging in the middle and the bombers not have to fly through the dogfight, they fly around in high cover. It still takes them, 9 inches of movement a turn, I believe, 9 or 8, I always forget.
9, I think.
Yeah, 9 inches. And so it still is going to take them a while to get there. They're actually moving faster than they normally would, which also kind of bothers me a little bit. And then they pop out. And so if you're...
He's a smart guy. He puts all his high cover chits right in the corner of the far table. Yeah. So, they're immediately going. They're immediately heading towards me 9 inches. That's pretty smart.
Yeah. So he places them on. He doesn't even have to move them down the board. He places them already right there in high cover on that board edge.
Yeah, and in Scenario 7, he's only required to put one element in on the table. So the game starts out, and he's got like 2 airplanes on the table. Yeah. And it's, however many turns, multiple turns to get the bombers all the way down. I'm talking like 6 turns maybe. I'm the only one flying. It's amazing.
Yeah, play a smaller board and don't put your laden aircraft in high cover unless you want the cheese award.
Well, Steve played it well. I mean, I was like, man, I'm going to punish him for putting those 2 planes on there. And, of course, we're playing a campaign too. So shooting down planes has, far-reaching consequences for later games. So I'm like, well, okay, if he's going to commit to playing this table edge, those planes are all going to be off the table for a long time. So I'm going to gang up on the ones he was required to put on the table and at least get some shoot downs. Maybe some of those guys will get killed and get removed from his roster, that kind of thing. But he just effectively kited me all over the board until those planes I put on the table were no longer a factor for his bombers. I mean, I was smart enough to keep some of my planes back to affect the bombers, but it wasn't enough. I mean, he had a whole squadron of attack aircraft laden with strafing ordnance to do that piece. That combined with a whole ton of bombers. I think he had 6 bombers, 2 elements of 3. all that combined devastated the target. And I think that's another thing we learned. Bombers alone, especially if they're flying all the way across the table, likely aren't going to destroy the target all by themselves. But you start putting aircraft with strafing ordnance, or one of those equipment cards that lets them get area hits, and that's a goner probably.
Well, yeah, that kind of brings up my next complaint about heavy rockets, is because now that we have heavy rockets, no one will want to take any other kind of strafing ordnance, because you can now do area hits and actually kill a target with strafing ordnance. So
let me ask you this. That surprised me. You said that a target is destroyed when all area targets are done, which I don't argue. I don't dispute that. I wasn't aware of that. I was going into it thinking all the targets had to be destroyed, both area and point targets.
Nope. A target is destroyed when all of its area hits or hull hits are consumed.
Do you think that would sufficiently level it out, or was it just a fluke that the target was so easily destroyed?
Well, you guys played with a 3-hit target, right?
It was a smaller target. I want to say it was an artillery position or something, which I don't think is a very large target in the scheme of things. It was no like battleship or destroyer or whatever the big targets are.
Well, but the problem is when you look at the pure odds of it, so you have 6 bombers at least. So that's, even if they're single engine bombers, or they probably were twins.
They were twins, yeah.
So that's 18 dice that you're getting.
Oh,
plus
more
if
than
you
that,
have
because you know what else we did? This is a campaign thing. Instead of having the bombers all be straight threes, we roll.
You also had pilot skills. So I was just referring to just their regular, even firepower dice, not counting the pilot skill 3, but you have 18 dice.
He attacked from high altitude and handily destroyed it all.
Yeah. So the odds are not working in your favor, because he is bringing heavy rockets. He's bringing twin engine bombers, and 6 of those against a target. That's why they only recommend 3 twin engine bombers against a lot of these targets, because you bring 6 and destruction is guaranteed. And then, oh, by the way, if you have heavy rockets, you, in a sense, have 6 single engine bombers. So you basically have, in effect, brought, not counting pilot skill, 24 dice to achieve your aims. There's no way a 3-point target's going to survive, because that's 24 dice of area hits. It's not going to happen. So congrats, Steve, on totally breaking the scenario.
I punished his attack squadron. He did it right. He flew his bombers in a way where they were protected by his attack guys, but they paid a sore price. I think he lost a lot of those planes, and many of the pilots were killed in the campaign. Of course, this is we have subsequent games that go on after this. So maybe if we kept rolling that scenario as frequently as we seem to be, he probably couldn't continue to get away with that, because he'd have no attack squadron, enough plays like that. But I don't know. I think even Steve was kind of scratching his head at the end of that, thinking, well, it really worked in my favor, but I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe I should have flown. I don't know. I don't know what his thoughts are on it. Maybe we'll discuss it before it comes up again.
So I have the question is, did he put his high cover markers on your side, or did he start on his home table edge and then march 4 feet down the board?
Oh, no. He started on his side. He just put them right in the corner. Okay. So they just start beelining down the edge of the table.
So now they're moving faster than a bomber does. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. It was pretty clever. I got to hand it to him. As soon as he did that, we've played it several times, and the first time, he just flew him straight there, and, it was a hard game. And then he started putting stuff in high cover, and then I think he started realizing, wait, I could put my bombers in high cover. Let's try that. It kind of evolved after we played it several times. And this last go around, I was like, wow, that was nasty.
Yeah, because I mean, the fact is, the way the board is set up in that one is the target marker is 9 inches from the enemy side, kind of in the middle of the table.
So that's what Steve and I were saying. Maybe I think I recall Steve saying, maybe we keep it like that, like just go ahead and fly this up, but maybe we'll choose to put the target marker in the center of the table. So there's still a cost. It's still a couple of turns to get to the thing. No
I think that actually makes it easier on them, because they have a shorter distance to fly off the board, because they still only move out of high cover to fly within 6 inches. So it's quick math in public. Let's say we're flying on a 4x4 board. It's going to be 2 feet minus 6 inches. They have 18 inches to cover before they can release their weapons, and they turn for home.
It's like 3 turns. Yeah.
So yeah,
2-3 turns.
Cheese. No, I get it. I understand it. But I tend to like having my bombers on the board. I think it makes a better game. But anyway,
it is a fun game. That scenario, I mean, is super fun, but I found it to be most fun when the bombers are coming, that relentless march across the table.
And to be honest, the game really was designed kind of for a 3x3 table. So if you're not playing on a dramatically huge map, if you're playing on a 3x3 area, I think it still works out pretty well, because if it's 9 inches from one side, you've got 25 inches to get to that target. And if your bombs can be dropped within 6, okay, so I got to get 19 inches. That's still only a couple turns, if you figure your bombers are doing, speed 5 or something like that. So it's going to be, 4 turns for them to get to their release. So it's not dramatically terrible.
Yeah, we were doing a 4x4, but that is a good point, because the distance, the way that, depending on what kind of table you're playing, that really impacts maybe decisions you have to make with your opponent about how to, because
you're basically adding another 2 turns of movement by making it a 4x4 table instead of a 3x3. So just something to think about. Well, cool. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for tonight. Brett, thanks for joining me. Chris, sorry you weren't here, but we made fun of you in absentia anyway. We'll see you in a couple weeks, and we'll hopefully all be playing Blood Red Skies at the end of the month. Brett, any last parting thoughts?
No, I'm just I've kind of ceased work on some painting, and I've been steadily working on this campaign thing to try to put something together that people can, use to kind of copy what Steve and I have had fun doing for the past several weeks since this lockdown thing started.
Yep. Well, sounds good. I will catch up with you next week in our next episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you all later.